Hi everybody, welcome to Poker with Kids, episode number 44. This time we're having a look at a cash session, 1-3 game from Star Casino at the Gold Coast, and looking at, in particular, 3 critical hands that really were the make or break hands for the evening and really sort of defined the session. So in terms of the poker at the start at the moment, they're basically using 8 cash tables. They've got a few extra tables that they're using for tournaments, and with Saturday they run tournaments on Tuesday and Saturday now. At the time of the recording, they were still in a post-COVID, everybody had to wear masks at the casino. Any outdoor thing in Queensland is now, you have to wear masks at least for the next week or two. So yeah, play was 7-handed at the cash tables, wearing masks. Ended up, I think overall they ended up getting about 6 or 7 maybe tables up by the end of the night. I think they had 2 or 3 1-3 tables, similar number of 2-5 tables, and maybe one bigger table, maybe a 5-5 or something like that. But I sat down at the 1-3 game eventually. It took me about an hour to an hour and a half to actually get a seat. But yeah, once seated, I decided to sit down for 200. I think the buy-in's 100 to 300. I was comfortable sitting down with 200, and most of the other stacks around the table, there was 1 or 2 that were big stacks around the $400 mark, but the vast majority of stacks on the table were around the $200 mark. So I just felt comfortable buying in for 200, and it actually turned out to be a fairly soft game compared to what I played at previously at the Star. I think with the other games running, a lot of times when I'd been there previously, they'd only had a few tables open, and a lot of players that normally played higher had played in the smaller games because that was the only game they could get a seat in. Whereas on the night I was there, the Saturday night, the players that wanted to play bigger played bigger. The players that were happy to play the smaller games would play smaller games. They tended to be more the typical sort of call and limp and call happy sort of players, rather than the more aggressive raising and re-raising types that you get in some of the bigger games, especially when they're playing lower stakes. So anyway, without further ado, let's jump into some hands and see how the evening went. So this was the first big hand of the session. Started off with a few players limping in front of me, and I looked down at A7 of diamonds, and yes, from a hijack I could potentially raise this hand, but I decided to join the limping train, as did a few other players, and I believe we went 5 ways, possibly even 6 ways to the flop. Flop's a pretty nice one for my hand. We have Queen of Diamonds, 8 of clubs, 3 of diamonds. So I flopped the nut flush draw with an overcard, and in this case the big blind decides to lead out for $7. We've got a few folds. I decide to make the call, and then the cutoff puts in a raise to $16. That gets some other players out. Then the big blind decides to also make the call, relatively small raise, and with obviously this price, I'm not going anywhere, so I also make the call. So we're 3 ways to a turn. 3 ways to the turn, which is the perfect card for my hand. The King of Diamonds. Checks around to the cutoff, who decides to, again, keep betting this time. He bets 41. Folds back around to the big blind, who decides to also make the call. And this is one of these spots where I was sitting with, I had 146 behind. So if I call the 41, I'm left with just over 100 behind. So I don't think there's really much to debate in terms of my move here. So I shoved, for 146 total. The cutoff got out of the way. And after a bit of deliberation, which is exactly what I was hoping for, the big blind decided to call. And it was not quite the river that I was looking for, but King of Spades turned over my Ace-7 of Diamonds, and our opponent mucked. He said he actually said he had a smaller flush, but off to a good start with a bit of a double up plus. So nut flush, good in this case. This next hand is a little bit later in the session, again playing 1-3, and I'm under the gun +1, and I look down at Ace-10 offsuit, Ace of Hearts, and 10 of Spades. Decide to raise it up to 11. Seemed like a reasonably standard play, especially when you're playing 7-handed. Obviously, I'd prefer a suited hand, but I'll take a Broadway Ace and put in a raise to that. So, get one play behind the call. Small blind gets out of the way, and the big blind decides to come along as well. So we go 3 ways to a flop. And it's a pretty nice looking flop for my hand. It's 10 of hearts, 8 of clubs, 3 of hearts. So I've flopped top pair, top kicker, and also got the backdoor heart draw. So nothing I should be concerned about. So I lead for 15, and both players call the 15. So nothing particularly out of order so far, all pretty standard. So we're still 3 ways to the turn. The turn is the 5 of hearts putting out the flush draw. This time again it checks to me. Again, I've got the still have top pair, no reason to give anybody a flush, and if need be, I do have the Ace of Hearts as backup. So again, I continue betting 20. That gets one player out of the hand, and in this case, only the big blind calls. So we're heads up to the river, and this is where the hand gets interesting and where I may have misplayed it. I'm not sure. River, 8 of hearts. So yes, I have made a nut flush, but it does pair the board. And in this case, the big blind decided to lead out for $30. Obviously, folding's not an option, but with the board pairing and the way that the players on the table had been playing, they've been playing, as I said, reasonably snug. So to lead into the person who'd been showing aggression throughout the hand, when a 4-card flush is on the board and the board's paired, knowing that I've got the Ace of Hearts, so he doesn't have the nut flush, really made me think that he might have had a full house. So maybe I could have played it a bit differently, but I decided to take the slightly more conservative route and just call the bet. Raising might have been an option, but I think it's one of those spots where if I do raise and I get 3-bet, I really can't call, and he does have the opportunity to turn his hand into a bluff. So did make the call, and fortunately for me, he turned over King 2 of hearts. He actually turned the flush, and obviously I'd got there on the river. So again, another nice pot to pick up, and again, that was a story of the early part of the session. And the final hand that we're going to look at here, which is fairly late into the session, the player who's the villain in this hand is to my direct left. In the cutoff, I'm in the hijack, or under the gun +2 as it was, being 7-handed. And when he sat down, he said he was normally a 5-5 player, but there wasn't a seat available, so he was playing 1-3. And you could tell by the way he was playing, he was sort of far more aggressive than the typical player that was in the game. A lot more raising and re-raising. But also he had the propensity to call down maybe a little bit lighter than you might expect for a 1-3 game. There's one hand previous, a few rounds earlier, where he 3-bet with King, 3-bet with Queen, on a 10 high flop, he'd bet big, been called. King came on the turn, he bet big again, and his opponent again called. And then he shoved the river when it was a blank, and his opponent had king ten of spades for a mixed flush draw, but the top pair with the king. So seemed like he played it fairly aggressively, and he'd been doing that kind of thing relatively. So he had a fairly fluctuating stack when we got to this hand. So again, we're still playing 1-3. So under the gun, limp for 3. I looked down at ace jack offsuit, ace of clubs, and the jack of diamonds. Again, I think it's a pretty reasonable spot to put in a raise, and again, with the limp in front of me, going to make it a little bit bigger. I decided to make it 13. And the player to my direct left in the cutoff decided that 13 was not enough, and he re-raised to $30. Folded back around to the under the gun player, who decided to make the call. Interesting spot here that he called. I mean, I don't think he's got a particularly strong hand, and there is a good case for possibly even 4-betting to try and get the limp caller out and have the $30 as dead money. However, ace jack is not, the super strong hand that I'd like, so I decided to just make the call. So we are going 3 ways to a flop. And the flop was a reasonable one for my hand. Ace of diamonds, 8 of clubs, 3 of spades. So one of these hands where, given the action that happened, basically checked to the cutoff, who bet $50. He only had 63 behind. That was something that really factored into my decision. The limper got out of the way, and it's one of these hands where I think I'm either way ahead, way behind. And given the fact that he's only got that relatively small, say it's almost like a min raise left, I don't think anything's going to change on the turn. I think he's going to shove the turn anyway, regardless. So I decided to raise to put him all in, raise enough to put him all in. And he relatively quickly called, which isn't really what I wanted. I was hoping for a little bit more deliberation, and he turned over ace, queen offsuit, ace of hearts, and the queen of spades. So we're looking for a bit of help on the run out. 8 of diamonds on the turn gave me a little bit of hope. There might be some chop outs with an ace or an 8. Obviously I can still win with a jack, but unfortunately 5 of hearts was not that card. So ended up losing that pot, but again, that was the final big pot that I played of the evening. But reasonably nothing particularly out of the ordinary in the session. One of those ones where you just outpicked on a hand like that, and with the short stack that I'm playing against, I really don't think there was much that I could do. So that's going to wrap up the hands. So overall for the evening, in for $200. High point I was sitting at about $500, but ended up catching out for $354. So $154 for the night. Can't complain. Again, relatively short session, about 4 hours. As I said, really only the 3 big hands that had any sort of significant impact to my stack one way or the other. And I think I played reasonably well, but happy to get back to the casino. Hopefully I'll be able to get back there a little bit more. But again, I'll see how things go in terms of work, time, family, all the other commitments of life. And hopefully you enjoyed the vlog. If you've got this far, don't be shy. Like, share, subscribe, put a comment down below. Let me know what you think about how I played those hands. And that's going to wrap up vlog number 44. Thanks again for watching, and hope to see you at a poker table soon or for another poker vlog. Thanks.